Welcome to Dude Ranch Studio 2.0. It's been a long time in the planning and the making. I've upgraded it with new acoustic treatment, some redesign of the actual room, and of course new gear and a completely new signal flow, signal chain. I have probably spent the last 5 years testing equipment, reading up on equipment, thinking about what my needs are, what my clients' needs are, and I've come up with what I personally think is the perfect signal chain with the perfect gear for my purposes and for what my clients need. So I thought I'd take you through that signal chain now and explain, how it all works and what does what. Just gonna briefly show you how the signal flows first. So this is my playback machine, where I use Audacity, for instance, to play back the file that I've gotten from my client. Runs through a digital to analog converter, through various gear, the master, which I'll show you, through compressors, through an analog to digital converter, into my capture computer, where I capture either with Wavelab or, as I have here, Logic, and then out on the speakers. So let's take a closer look at the gear. So the first thing that my signal hits is Dangerous Music's digital to analog converter, the Source, which is insane. It's you can't believe how much difference it makes, but it makes a huge difference. It's just pristine conversion. Then it jumps to another Dangerous Music box, the master, which is basically a master console, sort of the heart of the setup. It's another amazing piece of gear. And what I do here is, it's hooked up to equalizers and compressors, and I can choose what pieces of gear I want to engage in the signal chain. It's also got mid-side encoding, so I can use the equalizer to equalize the mids or sides, for instance. Very practical. And it's also got its own little width control here, so you can broaden the stereo image in a very musically pleasing way. You can adjust your input level, your output level. You can offset monitor level so that it's all even. The first equalizer that the signal hits is Alicia's X-Filter Mastering Edition, which is an amazing piece of gear. So this has been designed in collaboration with Bob Katz, probably the world's most legendary mastering engineer. And I mean, the frequency points are chosen with such intelligence, and the musicality of this EQ is just astounding. It might be the best EQ I've ever tried. It's not for surgical EQ, but for those, broad strokes that you need for mastering is just excellent. Then there's my Drummer 1973, which I've had for a long time. I considered selling it, then thought the better of it, because on reflection I realized that I use this on pretty much every project I have, so why not keep doing it? So as some of you know, this is a multi-band compressor. You could call it a dynamic EQ, I guess. It's one of those sound better kind of boxes, but it's also, if you have a mix that's a little bit wild, a little bit untamed, it's really good for just sort of leveling the frequency balance out. So that's this side of the table. Let's go to the other side. So next up in the signal chain is the API 2500, classic bus compressor, classic glue for a mix. It's got some cool features, like you can choose between a feed forward and feedback type compression. And it's just in addition to gluing, it can give a lot of nice character to the mix. Then it's the SPL Vitalizer, classic piece of gear, sort of a mystery. No one entirely knows what it does, but what it does is incredible. It can tighten up the low ends in ways that you wouldn't believe. It's got very beautiful stereo widening, and it's just, you gotta have it. It's great. Then comes my favorite compressor, the Dictator Varimu compressor from GainLab Audio. It's the best compressor I've used, and it's the last piece of my analog chain. I don't use it very hard. I use it just to sort of tickle the edges of the music, but it does it beautifully. Finally, the signal hits the analog to digital converter before it goes back into my computer. I use the Dangerous Music 80 Plus, which is another amazing and sophisticated piece of gear that, in addition to having wonderful conversion, also has a Hammond transformer at the end of it, so you can really spice things up a little bit. So once the signal has gone through all of these little channels, it's captured on my capture computer. It can be sent to the monitors either via my master console or via another digital to analog converter that I have in a sidecar here. Yeah, I guess I should also mention the monitoring. It comes out in my Neumann KH310 monitors. Fantastic monitors. I was considering getting the subwoofer, but once I treated the room with new acoustic materials, turns out I don't need any subwoofers. There's plenty of bass to go around, and then of course I have my trusty old Yamaha NS10s, which I never no mix leaves this studio without having been tested on those. I mean, they're just you know, a sort of security measure that I really like. So I think that about wraps it up, and welcome.